Yogis, I'm Laura. Today we're going to be talking about Kundalini Yoga. So Kundalini Yoga is a very different form of practice than what most yogis are used to, especially in the United States. It's a practice that's a lot more common in Europe and even in Canada. So you'll see a lot of teachers from other countries, but in the US there's not a whole lot of accessibility to Kundalini Yoga. And I really think that's unfortunate because it's a great practice. It's a practice that for me is really helpful when I feel like I need to let go of something, when there's something that's been bothering me or something that I feel like is kind of weighing me down. It's a practice that completely lets me release that, and it's a great way to increase your energy. So if you're feeling tired, I especially like to do Kundalini practice in the winter, because when it gets toward January, February, and it's really cold and dark out, it's hard to keep your energy level up. And this is a practice that can help you to do that. It's really good for self-regulation. So I wanted to talk about exactly what Kundalini Yoga is, what makes up the practice. And I'm excited because I'm going to be doing a regular Kundalini class in my live class. So every week I do a theme, and that's what these boards are from. I write up a board every week, and I use that to explain whatever the theme is to my students. And I decided that the first full week of each month I'm going to do Kundalini Yoga as a theme. And I'll pick different aspects of Kundalini Yoga to talk about each week. We'll do different kriyas to address certain chakras or different energetic properties. But today I just wanted to go over all of the basics that make up Kundalini Yoga. And I think it's interesting because if you watch different videos on YouTube, sometimes you'll see people leave comments like, oh, that's not yoga, or something along those lines. But it's important to understand that this form of yoga is actually older than the vinyasa kind of yoga that most of us are used to. That yoga that's based around the sun salutations and you flow from posture to posture. This practice predates that. And it was very much practiced in a guru-student kind of dynamic, where there was a guru or a teacher, and that teacher would see what that student needed to work on and then assign specific practices to address those areas of need. There wasn't this one-size-fits-all, everybody goes into a room and does the same kind of practice. It was very specific. And because of that, I feel like Kundalini Yoga and yoga therapy go together really, really well. Each of the kriyas or each of these practices has such a specific thing that it's working on, and it's usually something therapeutic, like addressing fear or addressing anxiety, releasing resentment, things like that, that are really specifically focused on things that we need to work on individually. So Kundalini Yoga is the yoga of awareness, and I love that because there are so many different points in the Kundalini class where you're directed to turn your focus inward. And while you're doing the practice, you're actually encouraged to keep your eyes closed so that you're not watching anybody else, you're not distracted by external input. And when you have your eyes closed, you are focused right up at your third eye point. So you have this very strong awareness of what's going on in your internal space, in your mind. Because what happens in your mind has that ripple effect to everything else in your body. So this whole practice, you constantly direct yourself to that space. So the yoga of awareness. And we'll start with these 7 different aspects of the practice that I listed over here. The first one is what makes Kundalini Yoga look very different. So it's the kriya practice. And a kriya is a cleansing practice. We have other kriyas that we talk about sometimes, the more obscure kriyas that involve things like swallowing gauze to clean out your stomach. Most modern day yogis don't practice that anymore. But these types of kriyas are movements that are designed to cleanse certain areas of the body. It's going to release physical tension, and it's also going to clear a specific energy in the body. It might be working on the heart space to increase compassion, or working on the space around our core to increase personal power and strength. So each of the kriyas has a very specific area that it's focusing on and something that is trying to cleanse or clear or open in our body. It also encompasses asana practice, so holding postures. There's usually some breath work that's accompanying those postures, but we also do hold things for certain amounts of time. But you'll see this very clear distinction between holding a posture and the Kriya, which is very quick, powerful movements that increases your energy. The pranayama aspect of it is going to be a lot of strong breath, especially when you're practicing the Kriya. Strong movement, strong breath. That strong breath powers your movement. And this is really where we start to get that energy rising up. With Kundalini Yoga, you're going to see a lot of pictures and a lot of references to a serpent coiled up at the base of the spine, and that serpent just represents a dormant energy that we have within us. And these practices are made to help that energy to rise up through the central channel, up the Sushumna, to the crown chakra. When it gets to the crown chakra, that's the ultimate goal of Kundalini Yoga. But sometimes people get a little bit put off by the fact that there's this idea of a snake or a serpent energy. And that's really just used because of the coiling effect. The traditional way that was shown was actually a lock of hair that was coiled up, and then as you would do this practice and that energy was released, that lock of hair would start to straighten and lengthen. So you can pick whatever image works better for you, but don't be thrown off by the fact that sometimes it's depicted as a snake and there's a lot of negative connotations that go along with a snake. It just happens to be what was chosen for that. I don't want that to dissuade anyone from trying this practice, which I think sometimes happens. So we have Kriyas, the asanas, the pranayama. The primary pranayama that really makes up Kundalini is the breath of fire. It's what gives this practice its power. It's what helps to increase the energy when you're doing this practice. So the breath of fire is a very quick, strong inhale and exhale that's focused in the diaphragm and the front abdominal wall. It works on our power center, and a lot of the movements in Kundalini Yoga are focused on strengthening and stabilizing our core, because that's where our physical strength comes from, and that's where our emotional strength comes from. That's where the Agni, or our internal fire, burns. It's what helps us to burn through negativity and let things go. If that fire isn't burning strongly enough, then things cling to us. We tend to worry more. We'll be bothered by something that wouldn't normally bother us. So we want to increase that fire, and then we're able to just burn through that stuff and let it go and keep that feeling of being light and moving through your life without being burdened. So the breath of fire, really, really powerful. So I'll show you what that looks like. It takes a little bit of practice to connect to those muscles and to keep the shoulders relaxed. But we think of it like a panting dog, where they're inhaling and exhaling quickly because they're hot. They're trying to cool themselves off. But we do it with the mouth closed instead, so it's through the nose. So it looks like this. And you can go even more quickly than that, but that just gives you an idea of how we're pumping forward and back with the diaphragm, with the abdominal muscles. Okay, so that's the primary pranayama that we use in Kundalini. There's other breath work that definitely gets used, but you'll see that one a lot. The chanting and the use of mantras is something you're going to see a lot more of in Kundalini practice than you will in your typical vinyasa class. A lot of yoga schools will only chant Om. That might be the only thing that you'll hear chanted. Or maybe one or two other little things here and there. Some places won't chant at all. They've completely taken that out of the yoga practice. But Kundalini Yoga believes that the sound and the vibration and the meaning of the different mantras and chants that we use are really, really powerful. You'll see a lot of music used within the practice, which I love. Some Kundalini teachers will sing or play an instrument during class. Unfortunately, I'm not very musically inclined, so I'm not one of those teachers. But I do like to chant a little bit and try to get people comfortable with that, because that's one of the things where when you walk into a yoga class and maybe you haven't chanted before and the people around you start chanting and you have that kind of feeling of, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? What are these people doing? It can be a little bit off-putting if you don't understand why that's happening. But it's very much about the quality of the sound and the process of controlling your breath to create that sound. So it's like doing a breathing exercise because you have to have that breath support to create the sound that comes out. But it's adding on this whole other component of vibration. And you'll feel that vibration all through your throat, and you'll even feel it in the room when everybody's voice joins together. You know this happens if you have a really good om and everybody ohms at the same time, and it's like you can feel the room vibrating. The same thing happens with the other chants when everybody's voice is in unison and there's that joining of all the energies. It's a very special process. So I encourage you to try to build a comfort with being able to chant, being able to say the mantras out loud. It also helps you to remember them better, just hearing them and saying them. So we'll do some practice with that. The sound component in Kundalini Yoga is really, really powerful and very therapeutic. So the next part is mudra, and you're going to see that in your regular yoga practice, but it's also used in Kundalini, especially in different meditations. You'll see a lot of specific mudras being used for meditations. You'll hold your arms in specific positions so that you can focus your energy to different points, and those mudras bring about specific effects. Again, that therapeutic component of the Kundalini practice. Meditation is always incorporated into the practice. There's periods of meditation and awareness in between the kriyas and in between the practices that you're doing to increase that sense of awareness. But there's also a meditation period at the end of class. And one of the things that makes the structure of a Kundalini class a little bit different is you actually do Shavasana earlier in your practice. It's not at the very end, it's just a little bit sooner. So that after you do Shavasana, after you do that final relaxation, you do a few postures down on the ground, and you come up and you do some breath work and you do some meditation. So there's a little bit more involved after you do that meditation or that deep relaxation. And that helps to integrate all of that energy and all of that work that you've done during your practice. In the case of my class, since my class is later in the day, it's from 6:30 to 7:30, usually more like 7:45. But by the time you get to the end of class, you don't want to be so awake and so alert that you're not going to sleep that night. So the meditation and the breath work at the end of the practice really helps to bring your nervous system back down and put you into that space of calm but focused. So you have that perfect level of energy, not too high, not too low. And then the last one is the use of Bandha. So Bandha is an energy lock, and we do 3 specific ones. There's others, but we do the throat lock when we drop the head down during breath work or after certain kriyas, you'll use that. There's the middle lock where we scoop the belly up toward the rib cage, and then there's the root lock where we draw the pelvic floor up and we try to contain the energy. The bandhas are really about managing the energy in our bodies so that we're not leaking energy out and making ourselves fatigued or making yourself feel scattered, that your energy is going in too many different directions. The bandhas are a way of training yourself to contain the energy when you need to contain it and let it go when you need to direct it toward a specific source. So those are the 7 things that you're going to see that make up this practice. And over on the other side, I wrote out a list of the chakra system. And in Kundalini Yoga, it's not just 1 through 7. So you have the root, you have the sacral chakra, you have the solar plexus, you have the heart, the throat, the third eye, the crown. The crown is 7. And then in Kundalini practice, the 8th chakra is the aura. It's the energy that you put out of yourself. And I really like that concept because it makes sense to me that when we walk into a room, just by our presence there, we have an effect on the people around us. By the way that you carry yourself, by your body language, by your facial expressions, there's energy that you're putting out there, and it's having an impact on other people. And that's going to be the aura. There's really, really great practices in Kundalini Yoga that work on expanding your aura out, making it bigger, and really clearing it so that you have a positive, peaceful effect on the people that you're around, rather than an aura that's very anxious and tense, because that will also rub off on the people that you're around. So we want to make sure that we pay attention to what kind of energy we're putting out there and what effect our practice has on that. This list right here next to it lists all of the different glands in the endocrine system that are associated with one of the chakras, all except for the aura, because that's outside the body. But I like this because if you come at your yoga practice from a very physical standpoint, you like to think about muscles and joints and organs, this is a great way to think about your practice, because each of these different areas of focus is going to work on a different aspect of the endocrine system. And the endocrine system is so important because this is where our hormones are directed to telling different areas of the body what it needs to do, how much it needs to do, if it needs to work harder, if it needs to work less. So that's going to dictate how we feel and how we function during the day. That's our messenger system. So the practice is going to keep the endocrine system strong and working really well. If you'd like to come at this practice from a physical standpoint, think about working on all of these different glands for the endocrine system. If you like to come at your practice from an energetic standpoint, thinking about the subtle body, then you can think about the chakra system. Or maybe you're somebody who likes a little bit of both like I do. So you can see that this is a practice that works on us on all different levels. And that's what really makes it powerful. So I think that that's a nice way to integrate your practice and to make it seem accessible, and so that you understand why we do these rather unusual movement sets in this practice. I put this quote right here in the middle, and this is something that you'll hear Kundalini teachers say rather frequently, and it's start where you are. Rest when you need to, and then start again. So if you're doing a Kriya and you start to get tired, you try to push through that initial fatigue. You want to build up some endurance, so you're trying to push yourself into that space of challenge, because the space of challenge is where progress happens. That's where we see growth, and it's where we start to notice things internally about ourselves. How do you respond to that challenge? Do you immediately want to give up and stop and rest, or do you tend to push yourself too far into that challenge and strain yourself? So it's really an opportunity for self-observation, learning about what your habits are. But it's definitely encouraged that when you need to, especially early on when you're new to the practice, the Kriyas are done for quite a while. So at some point you're probably going to want to rest, take a few breaths, slow down, bring yourself into that space of awareness, and then when you're ready you rejoin the group and start to do that Kriya again. But making sure, especially in the beginning, that these really strong movements, that you're paying attention to the way that your body feels and the way that your body reacts to it, because you can overdo it. So you want to make sure that you're not pushing yourself so hard that you start to strain. So that's a really key concept in Kundalini Yoga, using that as a way to learn about yourself. Then I put down the opening mantra that we use in Kundalini. We get right into that chanting straight off the bat. So the Adi mantra, which is Om Namo Gurudev Namo, we chant that 3 times at the opening of Kundalini practice. This is such an interesting chant because this chant is all about connecting to your teacher. The process of being in a class and learning and connecting to the teacher that might be up at the front of the room, the greater teacher, whatever that might be in the scope of the universe, but also, even more importantly, the teacher within you. So at those different points during class, when you have those moments where you think, I should take a rest right now so that I don't strain myself, and then you take your rest, and then when you feel like you're ready, you start again. And the teacher that's going to allow you to observe different thought patterns and learn from that. So there's these teachers on all these different levels, and we say that this mantra, or this chant, invokes the golden chain. It's the chain of teachers that have passed this information down for literally thousands of years so that we're able to do this practice. And how grateful we are that that chain has remained strong for all of these years, that it wasn't broken and these teachings were lost. So being a part of that golden chain is something that is really powerful. The other chant that I put down here, and there's a lot more, but these were the two that I like to focus on right in the beginning to just get you comfortable with chanting. So the other chant is Sat Nam, and you'll hear this a lot. We use it as an internal mantra when we're doing different kriyas to give your brain something to hold on to and something to focus on, so that when you're doing the kriya and you get to that point where you hit the wall and you're tired and you think, well, maybe I'll stop, I could kind of use a rest, you can keep doing your mantra to find that extra bit of strength and energy so that you can keep going longer than you felt like you could have. But Satnam is a mantra that means truth is my name, or truth is my identity. I identify with the universal truth. And we say that at the end of class, kind of like we bow and we say namaste to each other at the end of a vinyasa class. We bow and say Satnam to each other. Very much the same way. We're saying that I acknowledge that my identity is truth, and I acknowledge that your identity is also truth. So, the last thing on the board is a flexible spine equals a flexible mind. Many of the movements and the postures that we do in Kundalini Yoga work on the central channel of the body. It's about keeping your spine flexible, keeping the muscles that support your spine strong, especially your core, the abdominal muscles, the lower back muscles, the hip muscles, that whole area that wraps around the center, keeping that strong and flexible. And by doing that, we're keeping our mind strong and flexible. So that is a good general overview of what to expect in your Kundalini practice. And I'm so excited about doing this on a regular basis and sharing this with you guys, because I think it's really going to add a whole nother dimension to your practice that you might not have even known was out there. So I hope you will join us for our next video, and I'll do a little bit of a practice to introduce you to what Kundalini Yoga is, so you can experience the deep awareness that it brings. Satnam, thank you for joining me.